Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Join Terry with Tracer Rounds every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern to hear interviews with veteran artists, veteran business owners, and businesses that support veterans. Catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and MB Radio. If you miss a show, you can listen again on Wreaths Across America Radio every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Tune in to see if you are on target. MBR, giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Every Wednesday, 3 p.m.
Hi, welcome to Tracer Rounds. I'm Terry, your host, and you're on Military Broadcast Radio, where we're giving veterans a voice. And I'm so happy to have in studio with me today Bart Womack, and he is a retired Sergeant Major from the 101st Airborne. And he has an interesting story to tell us. But first, we want to talk about, well, I wanted to just hit another highlight. You are the Sergeant of the Guard of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, too, right?
Correct.
I want to ask you about that when we get a little further into the conversation. But you're also a show host on the Veterans Channel.
Yes.
And you're a producer and a show producer and an actor and a military technical advisor for movies too, right?
Yes.
That is so crazy. I think that is the neatest thing ever. I love that you transition your military experience into these marketable skill sets to go into movies and to go into other venues that, it just transcends the military experience, but it's still inclusive of what you know and what you've learned. But first, I think we'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, your military service. Like, when did you join? How old were you? And what did you enlist in first? And what was your MOS? Things like that. If you could tell us about that.
All right, there's about 6 questions. I'm going to try to nail them all.
Sorry. I'm so excited to talk to you. I just can't stop asking questions.
I appreciate being on the show. So born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. So native Columbus, Ohioan. Buckeye for life. That's why I joined the military. I kind of stumbled upon the military. Even though I had an older brother that served in the Navy, he's like 19 years older than me. So I didn't really see that service. He was in and out before I knew anything. Probably only saw him in uniform one time and didn't really know anything about it.
Right.
So I had a single parent mother. My father passed away when I was 1, so I didn't really have that male influence and to know the military in that particular way, right? And so come high school, the recruiters would frequent the hallways of the school trying to recruit. At least they were allowed to in those days, way back when. So I never spoke with them at that time. I had always worked growing up, always had a job, always had my own money to spend, so I didn't have to ask for money. And I liked money. I like being able to make money.
Right.
I was focused on work. So I graduated at 17 years old. I told myself that I would start college, but it was going to be a year after graduation. I just wasn't mature enough, to be honest with you, right? So I was working a good job, and my next oldest brother, he had wrecked a car, and that was my transportation back and forth to work. So I had to start taking the bus. So it's like October-ish, I believe, and got pretty cold really quick that year. And I was in between transferring on the bus and walked past the recruiter office and said, I'm going to go in here and get warm. I know they're going to talk my head off about joining the military. I'm 17. I can't sign myself. So, well, I'll let them talk. I'll have some hot chocolate.
Right.
Warm, then I'll come back out and I'll catch my bus. So that's exactly what happened. They talked. I got warm. They told me some things about the military and some options and all this type of stuff. And I said, okay, well, I'm 17. My mom has a sign or whatever. Maybe I'll go home and tell her. I went home. I didn't tell my mother anything. My birthday was in December. So I finally got around to tell my mother that I went in there, and they would be calling. I think every time they called, she wasn't home. But she also knew that when I turned 18, I could make that decision myself. So I turned 18, December 17th. That's my birthday. I still didn't make a decision. It wasn't until sometime in January that they called, and I answered and said, okay, let's take a look at this. What's the next steps? And it was, the testing and all that type of stuff. I did that in February. The job I was working, I went to work and they were laying off. They were laying off in 2 weeks, and I called the guy and said, okay, I'm ready to go. And I left in 2 weeks in the military.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it all happened, that fast. So basic training, AIT, all that. That's when I signed up for airborne school. I knew nothing about airborne school. Knew nothing about airborne or jumping out of airplanes. I went to the briefing for that, and they said that the guys that were going, said, you got to be crazy. I learned that they pay $55 more a month, and I said, I'm in. Sign me up.
For 55 more.
Yeah.
Would you do the same now if they said, I'm going to give you 55 more if you jumped?
Well, yeah, now I would, because I didn't know, I didn't know anything about the military. I didn't know that paratroopers was like the thing. And this is 1977. I kind of skipped over that part, but joined in February 1977. And I didn't, because I didn't know anything about the military. I didn't know that paratroopers were the it. Had no idea. And how strapped they were, and the jump boots and all that stuff that came with it. So I definitely do it now. It wouldn't even be about the $55. It'd be about being a paratrooper. Yeah.
Right.
So I had my first assignment in the 82nd. And served there for about 2 years. Next assignment was Korea, and then back to the 82nd. Then I re-enlisted and went to Turkey for a year. I played a lot of sports in Turkey. I played every sport that we could possibly play, because the championships for that was held in Italy. That was the higher level command. And I played basketball. I played football. I ran track. I played volleyball. Played tennis. So I remember going to play tennis. We were in Naples. No, they were in Naples. And I left there to go back to the base in Turkey. I was there for 2 days to go right back to Italy again for track.
Oh, wow.
So then I couldn't go for basketball. Actually, I couldn't go for football because my boss said you spent more time in Italy than you have in Turkey. So I was able to go later on for volleyball. But after that, I was influenced by one guy, and this guy was an Army Ranger. He served in the Rangers, and now he was in this unit. And he was also had been a drill sergeant. So that inspired me to do both of those things, starting with being a drill sergeant. So I signed up to be a drill sergeant. Left Turkey, went straight to drill sergeant school. I mean, I had just turned 23 years old. I don't know if you could drill sergeant at 23 now, but you could back in those days. So now it's 1982. I'm a drill sergeant for 2 years. I completed that time and then went to Korea. And I was assigned to the JSA, which is called the Joint Security Area, where, part of your job, you're interfacing with the enemy of North Korea, the KPA, the Korea, they call it Korea's People's Army. So you're facing with that enemy right there on a regular basis. Now, although in the JSA itself, that's where they have the peace talks and everything. I mean, there's no fighting going on, but they're still the enemy. There could be fighting going on. And long and behold, I'm assigned there in July, and long and behold, November, we did have a firefight with them. Someone that came to the JSA on the communist side, and they had already planned a 2-year plan to defect from North Korea into South Korea. And they ran across the border. The KPA started shooting them, and then that started a firefight between us and them.
Wow.
Kind of a story that most people never even heard of, never knew that it even happened, that there was an actual, firefight for about 25 minutes or so between the KPA and the U.S. on the South Korean side.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So left there, I went to the Old Guard, just in a regular unit there. It's another unit I really didn't know anything about. I hadn't been there. A guy that was in Korea with me had been there, and he talked me into going. So I went to the Old Guard. He kind of showed me the ropes and everything, and how to march like they do, how to march with the sword. So now I'm a staff sergeant. And he went down to try out for the Truman Unknown Soldier. And the Truman Unknown Soldier has 3 reliefs, first, second, and third, and they go by height. The first relief, those guys are like 6'4", 5 and above. Mm-hmm. Second relief is about 6'1"ish to 6'3". Third relief is 5'10", and somewhere in between that, maybe 5'10" to 6 foot-ish. So based on my height at 5'10", I could only go to 1 relief. So he was there and had the third relief, and then he moved to second because he was taller. So that opened up the spot in third relief, and I went to try out for that spot. So it was me and another guy, and then he quit. So that meant that I was probably going to be the guy, but they don't until you still have to do all the work. So you're doing all the training of what you do outside. You have to know, a massive amount of knowledge. So when you take the badge test, there's 100 questions on that test. You have to get 90% on that test. And most people, this stuff is drilled and grilled into you. So most people get 100%. But that cemetery in and out like the back of your hand. Everyone who shouldn't say it like that. I would say prominent people that are buried there, you know their, not only their names, but their grave site. If they have some history attached to them, you know where their grave site is. I used to call us the living historians of the cemetery, because the pedestrians would come and visit, or the visitor, I guess I should call them, and we're the only living, moving thing. Right. Who we are by our haircuts and all that type of stuff, and they just may ask you a question while you're going from point A to point B. Not when you're on your way out to do the ceremonial part and you're in civilian clothes, but they can see by the haircut, right? Yeah. We have it all over our jacket and a polo shirt and everything, so they know. And they may ask you a question about where someone may be buried, but we knew where everyone was buried. There was someone, so when the visitors came, we could kind of tell them that. So I did that job for 18 months, and then I went to be a platoon sergeant. While I was doing that job, I also went to Ranger School from there. And my job was relief commander. So that's the guy, if you ever seen the Truman Unknown Soldier and seen a guard change, that's the person who's coming out. They're the ones with the holster and the pistol, and they're saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, have your attention, please. The ceremony about the witness of the changing of the guard." That's the one doing all the talking, and that's the one who was inspecting the weapon. The sentinels is what's called the person that's walking back and forth. Mm-hmm. So after 18 months, I went to be a platoon sergeant, and then I later came back to be the sergeant of guard at the Truman Unknown Soldier. So that's the guy when you turn your television on Memorial Day and Veterans Day that's interfacing with the president or with the reef. I did that for years. So 2 of those years when you turn your television on, if you have happened to, then it was me.
Wow, that's awesome. I can imagine. It's pretty to be in that spot. You really have to sequester yourself from everything, right? I mean, I've read about it. My drill sergeant, when I went through AIT, was he was at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier before he came to our AIT unit in Fort Jackson. But the way he talked, he said that you really had to agree to a lot of different things in order to be one of those soldiers that was there and worked at the tomb, like no alcohol and no cursing and things like that. Is that true?
What's his name?
I don't even know that I remember his name now.
I don't know where that came from. First of all,
he was really tall, really tall.
Yeah. Not true. Yeah, I don't know if we could survive without the profanity. I mean, obviously, it's not sit outside, not where you're on the mat, not where you're doing your job, but
right.
I mean, yeah. So not true.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that came from. Now, you do walk a tight line in terms of being the best of the best, and in terms of discipline, honor, respect, loyalty, all those things that the Army does in the first place is taken to a different level there. You really have to walk the walk and talk the talk, but it doesn't go that far. Now, if you do something that's unbecoming, and probably it would get you in trouble anyway in the military. But if you do something that's going to get you in any trouble, period, the only thing that's added on to that Article 15 or whatever it was, they will remove your badge.
Oh, wow.
That's probably the worst that happened. That's a lot, because you did a lot to get that badge.
Right.
So there's several, like if you were able to go down there and you look at the badge board of all the names that are on there, and they're all going in badge order number, and then you see a plate moved, that means that person that did something and their badge was taken away. But it had no drinking unless they got a DUI, it had nothing to do with drinking or profanity. But you do have to walk a tight line, but it's not that strict.
Well, we need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll kind of wrap up your career, and then we'll kind of move into the story that you're going to tell us, and then about your book. So we're going to listen to Dustin Gardner, Brother in Arms.
On the front lines we stand, side by side, with courage and strength that we won't let slide. Through the chaos, our hearts beat as one. Each brother's a soldier, into battle we run. When the shots ring out, we won't back down. In the silence of loss, we'll wear our crown. We are soldiers, brothers in arms. Through fire and fury, we weather the storms. In unity, forged through the blood that we shed. Together we stand, living for the dead. Each step we take, through the mud and the pain, memories linger like the echoes of rain. We fight for the fallen, our spirit won't break. In honor we carry their names in our wake. Though the cost is high, our bonds grow tight. In the darkest of hours we'll shine our light. We are soldiers, brothers in arms. Through fire and fury, we weather the storms. In unity, forged through the blood that we've shed. Together we stand, living for the day. With every heartbeat, we carry their name. In the brotherhood force, you'll never be the same.
Welcome back to Tracer Rounds, and I'm your host, Terry, and I have with me retired Sergeant Major Bart Womack, and we were talking through your career and how you were at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and then you can pick up the story from there if you don't mind.
Yes, it's kind of funny. I'm going to a Tomb Guard reunion that they have. I guess they have it every other year, and that's coming up in November, I believe. So first thing I'm going to do is say, "What about you a drink?" But I heard you guys can't drink, so. You can't talk to me like that either.
That's funny.
So I left the Tomb Unknown Soldier. I got promoted to I guess I should say when I started, I was Relief Command. I was a staff sergeant, and I got promoted, and I had to leave, and that's when I became Tomb Sergeant in one of the companies, and then went back down to be a sergeant of guard. And then I was promotable again to first sergeant. Then I left there to go to Hawaii. So I spent 3 years as the first sergeant in Hawaii, where we deployed. Actually, right off the bat, my first 30 days, we deployed to Malaysia to train with that army. Something called Gaga Corps, which meant strong in Hawaiian and strong in Malay, and like a 30-day training thing. Mm-hmm. And then deployed going to Haiti for Operation Uphold Democracy. Spent 3 years there, then I left to go to be a Ranger instructor down in the Florida phase of Ranger School. So it's kind of unique and funny in that you go through Ranger School, you got that other side of being a student, and now you're on the other side.
Right.
So
cadre.
Different, yeah. And you control it. You control that particular patrol. I was the first sergeant. You control the company. You control a lot of things from that particular side. So it's kind of unique and different. But I guess some takeaways I learned was how things were when I went through. And should you be doing some of those same things, or do you keep doing them, or do you change it because you can change some things? Not necessarily controlling methods or stuff like that. Probably a little, silly things that maybe I never got a lesson out of because the RI decided to do it that way. It's something they just put in there, right? Versus let's do things that they can truly get a lesson out of it versus just, playing around. So my point is having the ability to do that. I had been in charge of the company and the patrol when I was out there. I left there promotable, so I was only there for 10 months. I got there in September. I made the Sergeant Major's list in December, and then I left in July. Wow. I went to Sergeant Major's Academy for a year, spent a year there, and then was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division. And second of the 327, no slack. I was a battalion sergeant major for actually 3 years. I was having so much fun that I didn't realize 3 years had gone by that fast. We deployed to Kosovo during that time, and then I became the 1st Brigade Combat Team Command Sergeant Major. So I took that job in May, and shortly after, 911 happened, and then we were just waiting and biting at the bit, if you will, to deploy to Afghanistan first, and then Iraq then began to emerge. So ended up deploying for the invasion of Iraq. So in all that preparation leading up to that, and we were always kind of ready to go. It's like, where's it going to be? And it finally became Iraq, and some advanced party kind of left in February of that year. So now it's 2003. I think I left during the 3rd or 4th of March to go over there, and obviously putting our plans together, waiting for the exact time of when the U.S. forces was going to invade Iraq. It's Thursday. I guess it's probably March the 20th over there, and that's when they had the bombs on Baghdad. That's what I call it. I think it was officially called shock and awe. They thought Saddam was in a certain area, and they just kind of peppered that area with bombs.
Yeah.
So 2 days later, we were putting the final touches on our plan to cross the border and invade Iraq. Now it's a Saturday, March 22nd. And at that particular time, we were told that we were going to do our part of the invasion that coming Thursday. So about 5 days from there. Yeah, had finished up the plans and everything. Our ammo just came that day, late in that day, almost dusk. The brigade commander told the battalion commanders, you can issue it whenever you want to. You can put a guard on there. You can issue it in the dark with lights from headlights, or you can wait till daylight and issue it in the morning. So I remember my driver bringing me my ammo. So my plan for the night was I'm gonna watch golf. There was TV in our tent where me, the commander, and the executive officer slept. And I'd watched golf a few weeks before. I had watched it the 2 days prior, and Tiger Woods was lapping the field playing in the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It had a different name at that time. Yeah. And so my night is going to be filled with watching Tiger play golf, load ammo. I had bought some snacks, and I was on my computer setting up bill pay. Yes, they had that back in 2003, brand new. And so that was my plan for the night. So it's about, it's after midnight, getting closer to 1 o'clock. The tent flap would just kind of blow in the wind or scrape up against the floor. And you could, hear that with the sand and everything. And the first time it happened kind of got my attention. I realized it was just that. So when it happened again, I didn't really look at the flap, but I was sitting at the end of a table. The television was about 5 feet, maybe 4.5 feet to my right. I'm at the end of the table, and just on the other side of the table, we probably have enough space to sit down. And then there was the tent wall. Well, an object that came in, I didn't see it come in, but I saw sparks. Yeah. So I knew we were in a land of not quite right, and that was a not quite right grenade that's sparking before it explodes. I'd never gotten that close to see what they actually do. So as soon as I saw the sparks, I jumped up, ran to the back of the tent to wake up the commander, who was asleep. He had gone to bed like 2,200 hours. The first time he had gone to bed that early. Wake him up and say, "Hey, there's a grenade about to go off up front. We got to get out of here." So he gets up. He's kind of on his knees. I get him up. He gets his boots on and everything. I said, "I'm gonna count to 3. I'm gonna run down the middle of the aisle." So those tents have two exits, one in the front, one in the back. But it's a tempered tent, which has a air conditioner heating unit, and because that's right in the back or whichever side you choose. That exit is all roped up and you can't get out. You could. It'd probably take you 15, 20 minutes to get through all that stuff to open it up or more. So the only exit quickly was out the front. So I said, I'm going to count to 3 and we're going to run. So I was operating under fluorescent light and everything was nice and bright. And then boom, it was pitch dark. And I always say you can close your eyes, put your hands over that and put 100 mile an hour tape around that. That's how dark it was.
Wow.
I try to figure out where the middle of the aisle is and just say, hey, we're going to run on 3, 1, 2, 3, go. And I'm running down the aisle with my hand up as if that's going to protect me from a grenade blast. And we just keep running. I make it out of the tent. He doesn't. I'm calling for him and in hushed tones. I believe that we're under some type of attack. I don't know what type. I don't see any attackers and he's not out there. Then I hear a gunshot. So I pull out my weapon to cock it, and it doesn't cock. So, if you load a weapon and you cock it, it goes, well, if you don't have ammo in there, I had a magazine but no ammo, then it just goes and locks to the rear. Remember, all my ammo was on the table. Now, it's guilty that I didn't load the one in my holster first. So I didn't have any ammo. So that gunshot shot the XO. When I was coming out of the tent, there's like a little vestibule area, and I could feel that he was in that area. he didn't know what I was doing or where I was coming from or anything, but I could feel that someone was there.
Yeah.
So when that shot happened, I heard a yell, I knew it was him. I couldn't do anything without ammo. You know, they say don't bring a knife to a gunfight. We don't bring a gun that doesn't shoot to a gunfight either.
Right.
So TOC is about 25 meters behind me, 25 yards behind me. And so I turn around and run to the TOC to get a weapon, get nods and ammunition. So I'm running there hollering for those things. You know, those guys got to kind of have a deer in the headlight look. And I position people at the various entrances of the TOC, finally get the weapon and everything and come back out, go to my tent to look for the XO and the commander, and I can't find him. And so I go back to the TOC and summon someone to go in the vicinity of my tent, look for them while I look for the enemy. So when I went back out with the nods and everything, I didn't see anyone. I couldn't find them. I didn't see the enemy. I didn't see any of our soldiers. So once I went back in, summoned someone to do that, I got on the radio and asked for a platoon to come in the vicinity of the TOC. I just called my old unit, the no slack unit, and said, hey, I need a platoon over here in the vicinity of the TOC to look for the enemy. And then someone came on the radio and said, do you need FLA, field lit or ambulance? I said, yes, send that over. I knew one person that had been shot.
Right.
So all those things are happening. I come back out of the tent. Then I'm challenged, identify myself. And the guy said, Sergeant Major, what's going on? I said, I don't know. Major Romaine has been shot. Then he said, Captain Seifert has been shot. So the time it took me to go in that TOC, back and forth twice, a grenade had gone off in the second tent. A grenade had gone off in the third tent, and someone else had been shot who came out of the third tent. Now, there's something happening with all this adrenaline. I can't explain it. I didn't hear I didn't hear either explosion or that second gunshot.
Wow.
The people in the second tent, they had began to get up after they heard the gunshot in the first tent. And the grenade explodes at a 15-degree radius. So anything above the 15 degrees or above is going to get hit with shrapnel. Anything below might have a good chance, especially about 10 degrees. So a few guys had begun to stand up, and the ones who were already, fully standing up caught a lot of shrapnel. Some had just gotten to their knees, so they got some of them in their legs and just various places. Like one was in the face because he was standing all the way up and it just flies. It was just flying razor blades. In the third tent, some people had started to come out of the tent. A grenade rolled in. One guy was on his way out, realized he didn't have his ammo, went back in to get his ammo, then started coming out. That's when that grenade exploded. He was 17 inches away from the grenade.
Oh, wow.
The one of the person who came out of the tent was shot point blank in the back. So now we have this hunt for insurgents, because who else could it be? The border is 6 kilometers away. It has to be insurgents. Now I had gone into the guard towers. Our camp is at least 10 football fields big. It's probably 20. It was humongous. There's 5,000 people in this camp. It's surrounded by 12-foot berms. At the top of the berm is concertina wire. So very, very hard to infiltrate the camp without the guards seeing you. I mean, you would have to somehow scale that berm that's all sand without sinking to get up and over to get into the camp.
Right.
And I checked the guards and they were doing all the right things, but I figured they had to have fallen asleep for this to happen. So I'm kind of furious that they had fallen asleep and insurgents got into our camp.
Yeah.
I realized, I said that something had to have changed, because if they're in the camp and we don't see them, like there's no sign of them, then something's wrong with that. So something had to have changed in this camp. And then I'm told that interpreters came into the camp. I said, well, it has to be them, go find them. So they find the interpreters, we apprehend them, they're on the ground, hands behind their head, M4s pointing at the back of their heads. We get them into a room and interrogate them just to learn that they have nothing to do with it. So now we're back to square one of trying to figure out who did this. Yeah. And I'm thinking if those insurgents can come here and commit this attack and then get out without a sign, then our intel is bad. We're going to get annihilated. We're going to be in for a serious fight when we finally do cross that border and get into Iraq.
Right.
The commander had been concussed. I guess I should tell you at this point, the reason he didn't make it out of the tent when I did, because a frag grenade that came into the tent. And when that exploded, it knocked him back into his sleeping area. So there were 3 frag grenades thrown. The first grenade that I saw that was sparking was actually an incendiary grenade that starts fire. So that's why I was doing that sparking before it emitted the flame. But, I wasn't waiting around. Saw sparks up, got up. So he's escorted into the TOC, and he says we need to get accountability. So that call goes out over the radio. We learned that one person, Sergeant Akbar, is missing, so are grenades and ammunition. So as I mentioned, the ammo just came that night, and Akbar was on guard. So he just opened up the crates and everything, took out ammunition, took out grenades, and where he was guarding the ammo of that subordinate unit, he came 300 meters across the desert floor to the headquarters area of where we were to commit this attack.
Wow.
And how we found him, once we learned that it was him, our intelligence officer came out of the tent. We came out together. He went to the right. He realized there was a bunker that he hadn't gone to all night, just to check on people, see how they're doing, give them some direction, etc. And his approach all night, he'd walk up to the bunkers. He was getting there saying, "Who we have here?" Of course, they would answer. In this case, he went and said, "Who we have here?" And the person says, "Sergeant Akbar." Akbar didn't know we were looking for him. And he maneuvered his way behind him and took him down. That's how he was apprehended.
Oh, wow.
So, and we asked him why he did this. He said, to keep y'all from killing our women and raping our children. Now, at the time, it didn't register what OUR, what's our? Like, you're an American, you are serving in the United States Army, you're not from here, who the heck is our? It didn't register. I didn't put 2 and 2 together that, he was talking about his faith, his Islamic faith and everything, and that's what he meant by our women and our children.
Yeah.
He's apprehended. I take his weapon and smell it to see if it's been recently fired. At some point, I had gone back to my tent to get my gear because I didn't have anything all night. Finally got ammo, grabbed magazines that were loaded, put them in my weapon and in my other holsters. My other ammo carriers. And but when I went over there, I realized that there was the brass that was expended from where the executive officer had been shot was on the ground. So when I smelled that weapon, I could tell it had been recently fired. I put it on safe. I did not clear it, which we know is always the standard procedure to clear a weapon. Right. I didn't clear it. I wanted that round that was in the chamber and the rounds that were in the magazine untouched, because if that piece of brass that was on the ground matched all the rounds that was in that weapon, they have numbers on them, just like your audience is seeing on your screen. When they see the back of that bullet, those numbers there are card-coded. So if they all match, if we were to turn all those around, we don't know if they're all the same and have the same numbers on your screen, but if they came from the same lot, then they would match. So if I knew that one on the ground matched the ones that are in this weapon, not only because the smell alone, we saying that it smelled like it's been fired, but those numbers matching is a totally different story. So I took the weapon to the brass, laid it down, put a guard on it, tell them you don't get relieved until I relieve you. CID finally came. They took Akbar. They began their investigation and everything. We tried to check on some of our wounded the next morning. They went to a local cache, and we learned that one person had died, the one that was shot point blank in the back, Captain Seifert, had died.
Yeah.
But while we were still looking for the attacker, in this case, the insurgents,
right.
The injured were taken to the aid station. The medevac helicopter came in. They were loaded into the helicopter. I think the first 4 helicopter took off, and it had like a 1 minute-ish flight to the closest cache. It was about 500 meters away. It took 1 minute to get there.
Wow.
That one took off. The second one landed. They got those loaded. As that one got ready to take off, or while it was being loaded, a huge fireball was in the sky. Just a huge explosion. So we're thinking that part of this attack is coordinated coming from the air and the ground, that was a Scud. We later find out that that was a British fighter jet returning from a mission, a British Tornado fighter jet, and it was shot down by one of our Patriot missiles.
Oh, no.
And these explosions going on the ground, gunshots, even though the Patriot battery wasn't on our camp, it was on another camp. It was still, one of the 101st Airborne Division's assets, and they're monitoring the radar. So they hear all these things going on the ground, and here comes this fast-moving object across their radar. They just figure it's part of the attack, and a Scud, and they shoot it down.
Oh, no.
So he caused all this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, it killed the 2-person crew. So my takeaways from that is that, one, we don't go home with people at night, so they don't know what they're planning.
Yeah.
Trust for me just went out the window from the very beginning.
Yeah.
This person took the same oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, just like I did, and now he's literally shooting us in the back. In the end, 2 are dead. One of the people in the second tent, like I said, once you stand up, you get more of the grenade blast. He had 83 grenade shrapnel holes in his body.
Oh, my goodness.
So he died of wounds 2 days later. The best thing that happened for us was we left the camp 2 days later. So this ended up being early Sunday morning. Monday morning, we had a memorial service for Captain Seifert. Tuesday morning at 08, we LD to cross the border into Iraq. Best thing that ever happened to us. When CID was doing their investigation, they had us clean out all the tents, and a lot of our soldiers were there along those tents and just kind of sitting on this wall, and the look on their faces, Terry, I saw these are people in this unit at this time cannot fight a war. They are not ready.
Yeah.
And I understood that people needed to grieve, but I said, everybody get up, get out here. I don't care where you go. It's a big camp. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. Go someplace.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Like, I didn't want to see that anymore. More importantly, I didn't want the division commander to show up and see that, because he might make the decision, okay, well, everyone else can go into Iraq and fight this war, but not this unit. And he would have been right, because we weren't ready as an organization at that particular time. And rightfully so. I get it. But I just made that decision to get out of here. I don't want to see this. Go fix yourself. Don't do the grieving thing, and then you come back. And that's why the best thing that happened to us was that we LD 2 days later, because now we could put this thing in the rearview mirror, and more importantly, now we know who the enemy is. Everything else is the enemy, which makes it a hell of a lot easier than thinking it's going to be, coming from your back.
Right. I agree. Wow. Well, we need to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the book that comes out from this story. So we're going to listen to Mr. Red, White, and Blue by Coffee Anderson.
It's the guts and it's the glory. 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's a line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey, from the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop, and his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the light. family is proud but torn. But if you knew him, you would understand. He was raised on how to be brave, just to see the flag still wave. And then he came home with only one hand. 'Cause Mr. Red, White, and Blue laid down his life for these stars and stripes. Staying on these front lines, he'll pay the ultimate price. Lay down his life for these stars and stripes. March in line, march in line. Hey. Hey.
Welcome back to Tracer Rounds, and I am your host, Terry, and you are on NBR, where we're giving veterans a voice. And this voice is to retired Sergeant Major Bart Womack. And we were talking about his tour and the happening that his unit went through. And from that event with the insider threat, you came up with a book called Embedded Enemy, and it's on your background. You can't really see it here either. I can't get it to be into focus, but I've been reading it. I didn't get through it yet, but it's a really good read. And I mean, it's a very poignant story, and it's not one that you want to have happen, but you relay the information really well to kind of really put you into the moment to see what was happening on the ground and kind of, walk us through the scenario and what was going on that day and the mindset of the people that are involved. So we really appreciate that firsthand account. So tell us a little bit more about that and about what you're doing next.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the effect of that last song there, Mr. Red, White, and Blue. You talked about the part where you left your newborn with your wife and Captain Seifert, who was killed. His son was only 4 months old, so it kind of hit me when I saw that.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
So this story, as I told you, unprecedented deadly attack and happening in that manner. It was gobbled up by the war, as well it should be in terms from a news standpoint.
Yeah.
And the investigation still needed to happen. Of course, they put out that the attack happened and someone's in custody, but they didn't know any details, so it got swallowed up. That same day was when the Jessica Lynch convoy got commandeered. So now we got prisoners of war.
Yeah.
You got ground troops on the ground. You got contact, all those types of things. So all those things took over the news, and rightfully so. But I realized that no one knew about the story, and I wanted them to know about the story. I wanted them to know about the sacrifices. More importantly, I wanted them to know that someone from the inside committed this attack. Someone leveraged the military to commit an attack against the military. And that's why I named the book Embedded Enemy, the Insider Threat. And as you can see, right after that, it says we have met the enemy and it is us. Like one of us has done this.
Yeah.
When I was writing the book, I began to look at all attacks. And then if the attack aligned with an insider threat, like a school shooting and it was a student, or a shooting in the workplace and it was an employee, there was another military person who committed an attack. There was a colonel in charge. He was the Royal Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, and he had killed 2 of his own soldiers. And he's breaking into women's houses and stealing their underclothes and all kinds of stuff. And he was regarded, obviously not as only the commander, but he had been a guard for the Queen. So it fit the profile of an insider threat, and we had met the enemy, and it is us. I learned later, 2 years after the trial, because you think, okay, what's the sign? Like, what was there? Why do you guys know? And that always stuck with me. Like, what did that lower level leadership in our subordinate unit not see something?
Yeah.
It not have been, as soon as the ammo comes, I'm going to commit this attack. But what was there? So that always kind of stuck with me. Even though in this particular case, unless he came out and said it, social media wasn't like it was now. Unless he came out and said it, there wasn't a sign. So in 1993, he wrote, "I do not like the military. They have too much control over people's lives. I suppose I am just anti-government. A Muslim should see himself as a Muslim only. His loyalty should be only to Islam." 1996, "Anyone who stands in front of me shall be considered the enemy and dealt with accordingly." 1996, "Destroying America was my plan as a child, as a juvenile, and while in college. My life will not be complete unless America is destroyed. Destroying America is my greatest goal." Excuse me.
Wow.
1998, he joined the Army. So all of this is already in place before he comes in. After already saying I'm anti-government, I don't like the military, they have too much control. However, now that I have this ideology about America as a whole, let me join the military. And he's patient. He's extremely patient.
Yeah.
This happened in 1998.
Yeah, so 5 years.
That's right. So February 2003, he writes, "I'm not going to do anything as long as I stay here at Fort Campbell. But as soon as I am in Iraq, I'm going to try to kill as many of them as possible." I remember we deployed there in March.
Wow.
So that was, we were never going to know that. So that's why I said earlier, we don't go home with people at night. And it led me to this quote that no profession, level of education, ideology, or religion is above reproach. There is no profile. The insider threat is closer than you think. So we don't need to look at another country over here just because they look like, or they're from the same country, or the people who flew the planes into the towers. We don't need to look that far. They are right here up under our nose. And that's why I'm to align them with this attack and these titles with school shootings and workplace shootings, because it's the employee who's doing it. It's the student who's doing it.
Yeah.
It's closer than you think. So don't get fixated that it's someone else. No one's walking down the street of the campus in your town and committing this attack. It's the student who already goes there. They already have a relationship inside of there.
Yeah.
They know where the students are. They know where the classrooms are. They know which doors are locked, which ones aren't. In a high school where the resource officer is. The resource officer is not stopping in these attacks. Yeah, I'm getting a little far down the road, but if it aligned and all these things start popping up as I was writing the book. So not only do I tell the story in the book, I also have these strategies, these proactive situational awareness strategies to mitigate an attack. I was always on this thing, and still to this day, it's like, okay, I know he had that in his diary and we didn't see his diary, but what was there? Like, what did he present that just was missed? I think they all present something, but if we aren't situationally aware, then we don't pick up on it. So I wasn't down there at his level, but his sergeant, what did he present to his sergeant? Yeah. They're not all said, I'm going to do this thing, but what are they putting out that we are not paying attention to? And that's what drove these proactive situational awareness strategies.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at everything in context and really delve into why somebody's acting the way they are, or if something seems really off. I mean, you need to start looking into that and figuring out why, because if you don't, you could end up in another situation like what you experienced.
Yeah. And I think the first thing I put in there, because that's the first thing that happened to me, is trust. Because we were supposed to trust, our comrade to protect us and to have our right and have our left and have our back, and not shoot us in the back like he did. So you got to start thinking about trust. And I'll tell you this in the story itself. The trust went out the window like immediately. Like, this attack happens at 01 in the morning, whatever. You go through that day. That night, I have a platoon of my own soldiers guarding us in this perimeter. There's 5,000 people in the camp. So they're perimeter around the headquarters. guess what they're facing out? Their weapons are facing out, pointing at who? My own soldiers.
Yeah. Wow.
Like someone almost got me, but I ain't giving no one else a chance to get me. You know,
Right.
the other thing I left out in telling the story was that when I went back to my tent to get my gear, I noticed that the grenade that did explode blew up right where I slept. So had I not been watching Tiger Woods play golf, then I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Yeah, oh man.
So the trust went out the window.
Yeah.
I came that close. I came that close. Good thing I like golf. And more importantly, like Tiger Woods playing golf.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd have been asleep.
Yeah.
So trust. So when I'm speaking to audiences, I tell them these strategies, but trust no one. Now they're gonna think, well, probably got to trust somebody. So, well, maybe you do, but how do you do it? I say trust no one because I know it's gonna make them think that they have to. But the message is, how do you do it? Because some people say, well, I trust people until they give me a reason not to. And I think, wrong. We need to change that one right away. But they have to change. They have to do it. It's not me. I want them to truly think about how they trust. Because I trust it. I trust it based on the uniform. I trust it based on the oath. I trust it based on those things. And that almost got me killed.
Right.
So think about how you trust. The next one is observe, listen, and report. And each one of these I have a story about. I'm not sure how much time we'll have to get into it.
We have about 4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through the strategies. But when I'm speaking, I have stories related to them that anyone can relate to.
Yeah.
That, any age for the most part, any of age person can exercise these things. Next one is know your neighbor. So not just the person who lives next door to you, but know your fellow student, know your person that you work with. The more you know them, the more they're going to tell you. If people will tell you anything, they'll tell you what's happening at home. They'll tell you what they're going to do to the person who cut them off coming to work. I got their number, I got their license plate, I know where they live. I'm going to, but they will tell you those things if you take the time to get to know them. Listen, don't just hear. A lot of times you hear things. I'm not sure if you're married or people close to you, whatever. So take the example of telling someone in your house to take out the trash and they didn't do it when you told them to do it. Well, they heard you and you said, I know you hear me, but they're not listening, so they didn't move. So you say it again until they're finally listening, and then they do it. That's not what stories that's associated with it, but you understand what I mean? The difference between listening, not just hearing. It's just gut check. Like our gut is our strongest thing. And we hear after these attacks at a school or whatever, where someone says, well, I always thought that there's something about their person. Blah, blah, blah. That's their gut telling them.
Yeah, their
Something
intuition.
Maybe something they heard. But more importantly, if they always thought, okay, your gut told you something based on something, but then what'd you do about it? You didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You didn't report what your gut was telling. But now it's the day and age where we have to start, reporting some of those things. You got to tell somebody about what your gut's telling you. Because if you go to the police with it and you say, my gut's telling me blah, 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 and if you talk to them long enough, they may be able to translate not only what your gut's telling you, but to come up with some signs and some clues or whatever. If this is happening, then that could be this. Right. Instead of the end, at the people they say, my gut said, well, you didn't do anything about it, so you don't care what your gut said. But we hear it every single time, right?
Yeah.
So those are the strategies. Trust no one, observe, listen, report, know your neighbor. Listen, don't just hear, and then gut check.
And so you're going to do a movie about the book too?
Yeah. So I wrote the screenplay, I think 2018. I did some updates and everything in 2020. So now I'm just trying to align with filmmakers, representation, and/or champions to get the movie made.
Very cool. Well, is there anything else you want to say before we close? Because we've got about a minute left, but I really appreciate you coming on, but I want to give you an opportunity to just wrap up whatever you want to say. Yeah,
I appreciate you having me. I mean, go buy the book. It's not just to go buy something. It's to learn about the story, learn that this embedded enemy exists and it's not going away. These attacks are still happening. We hope that they don't happen in the military anymore. But because Akbar did this over 22 years ago, there have been others that come behind and do the same thing. We're a copycat world. What people say they do. he did it, pulled it off, didn't get away with it, but he executed what he had planned to do, and others behind him have done the same thing that I don't have time to tell you about. But it's real and it exists. Then more importantly, those strategies are in there to mitigate attacks of where you work, where you live, and where your students or your children go to school.
Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate the conversation. It's really nice to talk to you and to kind of hear your story and hear your history of service, basically, too, because you have quite a history in the military and the Army. And I really want to thank you for all you do for veterans and for what you do for the society as a whole, kind of preparing them and getting them ready to watch out for, some unknowns and something that can potentially happen if you're not paying attention.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you. This is Teresa Round signing off.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.